this is the sun. As far back as 10,000 BC, history is abundant with carvings and writings reflecting people's respect and adoration for this object. And it is simple to understand why, as every morning the sun would rise, bringing vision, warmth, and security, saving man from the cold, blind, predator-filled darkness of night. Without it, the cultures understood the crops would not grow and life on the planet would not survive. These realities made the sun the most adored object of all time. Likewise, they were also very aware of the stars. The tracking of the stars allowed them to recognize and anticipate events which occurred over long periods of time, such as eclipses and full moons. They in turn cataloged celestial groups into what we know today as constellations. This is the cross of the zodiac, one of the oldest conceptual images in human history. It reflects the sun as it figuratively passes through the 12 major constellations over the course of a year. It also reflects the 12 months of the year, the 4 seasons, and the solstices and equinoxes. The term zodiac relates to the fact that constellations were anthropomorphized, or personified, as figures or animals. In other words, the early civilizations did not just follow the sun and stars, they personified them with elaborate myths involving their movements and relationships. The sun, with its life-giving and saving qualities, was personified as a representative of the unseen creator or God, God's Son, the light of the world, the savior of humankind. Likewise, the 12 constellations represented places of travel for God's Son, and were identified by names, usually representing elements of nature that happened during that period of time. For example, Aquarius, the water bearer, who brings the spring rains.
The obelisk standing in the center of St. Peter's Square is closely related to sun worship. It was the custom of the ancient sun worship religions to make a pillar to worship the sun. Obelisk was set up at a temple or tomb as a monument to worship the sun god. It typically had a pyramid-like shape at the top, and the pyramid is the emblem of the sun god of the Egyptians, Ra. Like this, the obelisk was made for the sun god. Then, why are the obelisks, the symbol of the sun worship, set up in front of the Catholic churches? When we look carefully at the obelisk standing in front of the Catholic Church, it has the star-shaped divine light and cross, which are symbolize the sun. Just as the obelisk is the symbol of sun worship, the cross on top is also the symbol of sun worship, which originated from Babylon. Crosses are also found in the murals of ancient Babylon and Assyria, especially the image of cross on the headband of the sun god Tammuz shows that the cross is originated in Babylon. The Egyptians used the Ankh cross. The shape of the cross made of 2 wooden poles, which the church started to use, came from the ancient Chaldean region. In the Chaldean Empire, the adjacent regions, including Egypt, the cross was used as a symbol of Tammuz. So, it is certain that the cross was made to worship the sun god. The Catholic Church set up obelisks in front of their churches and put the cross on top of them without exception. They put one more symbol on the sun on top of the solar pole obelisk. However, they made an excuse that they put the cross on top of the obelisk to show that they conquered the obelisk, which is the symbol of paganism. However, The obelisk standing in front of the church as a symbol is nothing but a vestige of idolatry, showing that they accepted the sun worship of pagans. The obelisk, the star shape of the divine light, and the cross are idols for the sun god of the pretense on belief in Jesus.
He said also unto me, Turn thee yet again, and thou shalt see greater abominations that they do. Then he brought me to the door of the gate of the Lord's house, which was toward the north, and behold, there sat women, weeping for Tammuz. Then said he unto me, Hast thou seen this, O son of man? Turn thee yet again, and thou shalt see greater abominations than these. And he brought me into the inner court of the Lord's house, and behold, at the door of the temple of the Lord, between the porch and the altar, were about 25 men, with their backs toward the temple of the Lord, and their faces toward the east, and they worshipped the sun toward the east.
Holy Bible, Deuteronomy, chapter 4, verse 19. And when your eyes are lifted up to heaven, and you see the sun and the moon and the stars, all the army of heaven, do not let yourselves be moved to give them worship, or become the servants of what the Lord has given equally to all peoples under heaven. Chapter 27, verse 24, the end. I found her and her people worshipping the sun instead of Allah, and Satan maketh their works fair seeming unto them, and debarreth them from the way of truth, so that they go not ere it.
Ra is the sun god in Egyptian mythology. This god is usually depicted as a being with a man's body and a head of a falcon. The sun disk is over his head. He had been one day the greatest of all gods, but time wore him down, and finding himself too old, he decided to relinquish the power and go to the skies. This god is one of the most revered figures in Egyptian mythology. As the sun god, one of his duties was to drive away the darkness, and to accomplish his work, the god crossed the skies on his sunboat, lighting the whole world. But when the twilight came, he and his vessel plunged into the sea waters towards the underworld. There he would have to sail through the dark world and cross the 12 gates, which would be the 12 regions of the netherworld. Ra took an hour to go through each gate. Osiris was in one of them, the lord of the underworld, whom Ra always visited to pay his respects. But before leaving the underworld's darkness, the god was attacked by the terrible snake Apophis. This force of chaos tried to destroy the god's vessel, and each day the serpent seemed closer to accomplish her desire. Apophis once managed to swallow the sunboat, putting an end to the sunlight in the morning. But the serpent failed to hold the god in her stomach and regurgitated him. This event was marked as a solar eclipse. However, destroying Ra's boat became more difficult, since Set, the god of destruction, after losing the dispute of the supreme throne for Horus, had been condemned to navigate with Ra across the skies. He helped the sun god, defending his vessel against the terrible serpent, defeating it several times, making Ra's underworld journey safer. The god Ra was a figure worshipped throughout Egypt, but this god was especially adored in the city of Heliopolis. The god's prestige was so vast that other traditions of Egyptian religions of antiquity merged the god's depiction along with the greatest figure of their own pantheons. For instance, the figures of the supreme gods Amun and Atum were also known as Amun-Ra and Atum-Ra. The god's name was used by many pharaohs. Ramses is a well-known example. His name means son of Ra, or the son of sun, and so the pharaoh would strengthen his divinity before his subjects.
put the mortal below deck if you want him to live. You shall never feast on my creation. Try as you might. Things would be different if I could dwell amongst my children in the Garden of the Nile. It is my burden to fight the demon Apophis night after night. Egypt must never be destroyed by chaos. So you see, there are things worse than said.
You're wrong. That demon isn't the one who murdered my father, murdered your son.
They are both my sons. They were both equal in my eyes, as is all of my creation, and the uncertainty of its destiny is my will.
But it won't be sitting on some dumb boat.
Grandfather, there's still time. Enough, beast! I have never been in debt, and yet I am in debt to you, grandson. Ask whatever you will. Mountains will kneel before you, the winds will do your bidding. Answer quickly, for Apophis still hungers. The night is always coming.
I want nothing. Except what's impossible for me to get.
Yawai Waratku.
Rawa Semifuna, Ramata, Rashe, Darari. Tasca Pay Sibon, Yonya, Dawayat.
Yuriak Yersen.
Traukati, Hadat, Sachiwa Shive. Bate, Yani, Ratatani, Yawataya, Haparia, Kizi, Hebnei, Yahabni, Mate, Hari, Ratsu,
Yuna, Ranakaya.
Sinifu Harakyanya, Nanach, Yarahwamini. Nedachaya, Nabai, Ramat, Miyaswe, Takhafet, Miyatati, Samyaya,
Year you negers.
Tahandro, Soini, Miyuyu, Ejava, Ruvu, Finch.
To many, this weathered old piece of concrete is just that and nothing more. But if you'll look closer, well, there's some unusual artwork from the past. Depicted at Pocket Park in Columbia, South Carolina, is a mural of Ra, the Egyptian sun god. Ra was believed to rule in all parts of the created world, the sky, the earth, and the underworld. He has a falcon head and was associated with a falcon or hawk. To the Egyptians, the sun represented light, warmth, and growth. Underneath the stone is a scarab, which in mythology rolled the sun across the sky. But where did this mural come from? And why an Egyptian god in Columbia, South Carolina? Back in the late 1980s, this solid piece of concrete was slated for demolition. Construction workers attacked it with everything they had, but with no luck. Finally, they gave up, and the pillar stood alone. Their failure was someone else's solution, and that someone was an artist named Richard Lane. Richard was a classically trained artist who loved his community and the mysteries of our world. After a friend brought him home a book on hieroglyphs, Richard knew exactly what he wanted to do. He'd paint a mural depicting Ra, the Egyptian sun god, along with various symbols and hieroglyphs on the stark pillar. Richard loved the unusual and the unexplained, and it showed in his art. He painted everything from Bigfoot to aliens. He even painted the Hulk on the side of the Grow Cafe to represent a mutant human exposed to gamma radiation. As Richard laid the last swaths of pigment onto the pillar and was finishing up painting the sun high above the ground, he turned to his friends who were watching and asked, "Is it finished?" They looked upward, above the pillar, and a number of hawks were circling overhead. It was a sign. Yes, it was finished. Richard put his own spin on many of the symbols. In fact, some translate to songs by the Beatles, such as "Here Comes the Sun" and "All You Need Is Love." Richard died at the young age of 45, and his artwork, well, it's faded and worn today, nearly 30 years later. But if you will stand under it around noon on a sunny day, there is a glow above the pillar. It means the scarab is working and the sun is rolling across the sky. Thanks, Richard.
The daughter of Egypt shall be confounded. She shall be delivered into the hand of the people of the north. The Lord of hosts, the God of Israel, saith, Behold, I will punish the multitude of No, and Pharaoh, and Egypt, with their gods and their kings, even Pharaoh, and all them that trust in him.
Pyramids are one of the most common of all human architectural forms, and one of the most stable. But the reason for building a pyramid is also related to a set of religious and funerary beliefs that the Egyptian espoused. Some of these beliefs are intimately connected to the Egyptians' own landscape. Until very recently, the Nile waters would annually flood and recede, leaving behind deposits of fertile silt, creating a visual effect that associated floods and mounds of earth to the regeneration and conception of life. The pyramidal form represents quite well the visual idea of the primeval mound of creation, emerging from the fertile floods. In fact, some early Egyptian temples kept a miniature primeval mound, which could take the form of a pyramid carved from a block of stone called benben. This was a representation of the first mound of land, which appeared after the waters of creation receded. From this primeval mound, and according to the Egyptian view, the sun rose for the first time, giving life and warmth to the newly created earth. Representations of the benben incorporated the very power of life itself. As such, monuments had not only aesthetic value, but were also imbued with powerful religious symbolism. The primeval mound, or benben, was sometimes included within the tomb structure, and in this context, they were believed to provide the power necessary for the spiritual rebirth of the tomb owner. The rectangular mud brick structure, known as mastaba, seems to have been connected to the representation of the primeval mound. Pyramids are therefore representations of the benben mound, but on a monumental scale. Benben was also the name given to the pyramidion, or the tip of a pyramid or obelisk. Both the benben and the pyramids symbolized the rays of the sun. According to the pyramid texts, which were nevertheless found engraved in later pyramids, the king would mount up to the sky by using the sun rays as a ramp. Thus, the pyramid was also a place of physical and spiritual transformation, which allowed the king to ascend to heaven and join the solar god during his daily rebirth. It is worth noting that the original appearance of the pyramids at Giza was very different from today, since at least the pyramids of Khufu and Khafre would have been encased in shining white limestone, which would have reflected the sun's rays and created a splendid visual effect. In addition, the pyramid complex also served as a model of the hierarchical structure of the Egyptian culture, with the king's pyramid towering over all other structures and surrounded most closely by his most important officials. This means that the significance of such cemeteries is not only religious or funerary, but it also reflects the practices of an entire society.
Obelisk, a tale of spiritual warfare, reveals knowledge hidden from the uninitiated since the time of the pharaohs in ancient Egypt. Robert Gerard reveals that in the very near future, every secret society and every major religion on earth will seek unity under the religious symbol of the standing stone, the obelisk. Obelisk reveals the path the Knights Templar took when they disappeared after being disbanded by Pope and King. Robert Gerard explains who and where they are today, and why the coming one-world religion will include their legacy. Is there a secret destiny being planned for America? Are the Freemasons behind that secret destiny? Robert Gerard has uncovered the hidden trail of Europe's leading occultists as they traveled to America among the very first colonists. These secret societies came for a reason. That reason still exists. Learn who brought them here to the New World and why. Obelisk also reveals how the New Atlantis of Sir Francis Bacon was established between the very same occult secret societies and select Native American tribes. You will learn how a Rosicrucian Grand Master sought out the Delaware Indians for a very specific occult purpose. That his secret society, the Rosicrucians, regarded the Delaware as one of the lost tribes of Israel, and you will also learn these occultists brought with them the Merovingian bloodline of France to work a black magic ritual with the Delaware Indians in a ritual involving the exchange of women. Find out what the ritual was, where it took place, and what was that secret occult purpose. Finally, Obelisk, a tale of spiritual warfare. We'll explain how these events are connected to Bible prophecy and the role the obelisk of the Freemasons will play in the very near future. The hole-in-the-wall story from Ezekiel 8 is revealed to be ground zero in the realm of this spiritual warfare. Obelisk explains the intimate details of this ongoing spiritual warfare, raging since Lucifer was thrown from heaven through an easy-to-read treasure hunt story. More importantly, you will learn not what you must do to be saved, but what you must not do to avoid the wrath of God in the coming New World Order. Robert Gerard challenges you to understand the stone obelisk named Cleopatra's Needle, standing in Central Park, New York City, is the exact same Egyptian stone idol referred to in the Old Testament when God instructs Moses not to erect a hewn stone anywhere in the land that God is going to give to the Israelites. Moses had been Pharaoh's chief architect and had erected many stone idols in the Egyptian cities for Pharaoh. Cleopatra's Needle was standing in Egypt at the very time of Moses, over 4,000 years ago. Cleopatra's Needle was carefully shipped to America purposely because of that unique history. On arrival in New York City, the stone idol was escorted through the streets by 9,000 Freemasons to Central Park, where a final resting place awaited. In direct opposition to God's instruction to Moses, that very stone has been erected by the Freemasons in the greatest city on earth. The novel begins with a conflicted character who tries to take matters into his own hand and is willing to sacrifice his own life to save America from this trespass against God. Obelisk will convince you, the reader, that the Egyptian stone obelisk in New York City reveals ancient Egyptian idolatry in contemporary society. Robert Gerard initiates the reader into secrets revealed only beyond the 33rd degree. Obelisk, a tale of spiritual warfare, combines fact, fiction, and a frightening level of evil in this apocalyptic thriller available at booksellers everywhere.
What is our true history? Why do we find many similar megaliths and pyramids all over the world, and all aligned to the sun and stars? Why did so many ancient cultures venerate the sun? Is there a connection between them? And if so, why has it been forgotten? Wouldn't people build the same structures, use the same symbols, and venerate the same deity if they had practiced or been influenced by the same religion? Don't we see exactly the same thing in the world today? And what if this religion had been taught far back in time by the same great teachers? Wouldn't we see them being venerated in different parts of the world, being depicted in the same ways, with the same objects, and in some cases, with the same names? Could they have given rise to a great civilization that revered the sun and that built many sacred sites aligned to it? And could the many traditions that still hold the sun as sacred today be part of its scattered remnants? Could the massive influence this civilization had upon the world be hiding in plain sight because it eventually collapsed and became lost to history? Is that why we keep accidentally unearthing ancient sites that we had no idea existed and are causing major paradigm shifts in how we see our past? I believe there is a real explanation for these seemingly inexplicable sites and artifacts that is based on real evidence. These ideas and more I put forward in my book, The Ancient Religion of the Sun, by looking at linguistic, archaeological, textual, historical, and genetic evidence. In my search, however, I haven't just looked at the dust and dead bones. I want to get to know the people, to uncover the human story and the religion that these people practiced. I trace the people and their ancient religion of the sun across the planet and throughout history, from its origins in the oldest known texts in the world, such as the Vedas of India and ancient Egyptian texts, back to a lost civilization of the Ice Age, popularly known as Atlantis. And even further back in time, to a distant golden age recorded in Egyptian and Indo-European legends, then travelling through thousands of years right up into its modern revival today. I outline what the ancient religion of the sun is and why the sun was seen as sacred, examining some of the ancient cultures that practiced it, including the Indo-Europeans, ancient Egyptians, some of the pre-Columbian North Americans, and Mesoamericans. I explore the reality behind many indigenous oral histories and myths to reveal how some of the most famous ancient gods were based on real people who founded the religion of the sun on different continents after the global cataclysm that ended the last ice age, and who I call the wisdom bringers. I also bring together the evidence to show how a lost global civilization, which I call the lost civilization of the sun, was founded in their wake, and how this civilization further spread the religion of the sun across the earth and built or renovated many ancient sites around the world aligned to the sun within the last 12,000 years, but how it eventually collapsed and became lost to history. Along the way, I also look at some of the most perplexing ancient mysteries, like lost cities, secret mystery schools, the discoveries of giants, and elongated skulls. This book has been such an amazing journey to write. It began 7 years ago in 2011, when my husband and I first started following the threads of what we came to discover was the ancient religion of the sun. We researched one megalithic site after another, examining their alignments and symbols, and one ancient text after another, until we had literally gone through many hundreds of them from all over the globe. What we have uncovered has changed my life. I've had what I call a Truman Show moment, a kind of watershed, where it was like seeing the puzzle picture for the first time, whereas before there had just been scattered pieces. I realized that huge parts of the story were missing from what I'd been taught about ancient history. And like the character Jim Carrey plays in the movie, I was faced with stepping out into the real world, and one that made much more sense. If you think what we know of deep ancient history is all just a myth, think again. What emerges from the available evidence are real people and real events, as well as one of the greatest true stories ever told. Thank you so much to everyone who has supported me during the making of this book. This is one stop in an ongoing journey in which I continue to learn and research. I'm sure there'll be many updates to this book in the future, but this is the story so far.
Right here is the ancient Babylonian altar for the sun god Baal, and its main symbol is the 8-pointed star, which can be depicted as 2 4-point stars built inside of one another as the solar wheel. We see the same solar wheel sunburst over a Buddhist temple in Thailand. Here is a monastery, St. Ignatius, where the solar wheel or sunburst is depicted in the floor tiles. The reason why they chose that solar wheel or that particular pattern is because it is connected to the pagan sun god worship, and that was what was found on every tiled floor in every single pagan temple to the sun god. And so we see this even today. Here is the face of a child, which is, of course, Tammuz, within the fertility symbol of the sun's rays on a Roman Catholic altar. The same exact symbol is shown in a face of the Babylonian sun god on a pulpit in a Roman Catholic church in Scandinavia. Okay, all this same symbol comes right out of paganism, as I've shown. Okay, this is probably one of the most fascinating pictures that I have. I zoomed in to the Vatican using Google Earth and stopped several miles above, and look what we discovered is this is the largest solar wheel on Earth. This is the court of St. Peter at the Vatican in Rome itself. And folks, just so you know that I'm not making this up, there is 8 quadrants here, exactly the number of quadrants that are found in the ancient pagan solar wheels. And you can see the hub there. We're going to zoom in on that hub. I'm going to show you what's inside that hub as well. But let me ask you a question. Why are these lines painted if it's not to be a solar wheel? These artifacts, this building was constructed to be an ancient solar wheel. And today, in modernism, we know that this is connected to the ancient sun god worship. The sun disk behind the head of this Roman Catholic statue in Westminster Cathedral in London. Where did they get the idea of sun discs behind these saints? It's because this was what was found behind the head of Jupiter and all these sun gods was the actual monstrance of the Roman Catholic Church. That halo is not a halo, that is a sun disk, and they borrowed it from paganism. We see here behind Krishna another sun disk behind his head. And this is just to show that it doesn't just happen in Catholicism, that the sun disk predates Catholicism by hundreds, even thousands of years. It was borrowed. We see it in stained glass windows behind all of the Roman Catholic saints. And where do we find this 8-pointed star, this solar wheel, this sun disk today? None other than on top of our Christmas trees. Now, I know all of us have been taught that the star on top of the Christmas tree represents the Star of Bethlehem, that the kings came in to find baby Jesus. But unfortunately, the star of the ancient pagan sun gods predates the star of the Christmas tree, the Star of Bethlehem, by over 1,000 years. They were taking the sunburst and connecting it to what you're going to learn in just a few minutes is the tree of Nimrod. And that is where we get our Christmas tree from and the star that we put on top.
Didn't that commercial just grab you? If you're like me, you couldn't take your eyes off it. Hi, I'm David Mould. What you just saw is actually a commercial for The Great Controversy. For the next few minutes, I'd like to talk to you about this book and this problem. How do we introduce The Great Controversy to the world without getting entire communities angry at us for flooding their mailboxes with unsolicited religious literature? I've spoken to people who participated in rallies, where they'll flood an area and just give away thousands of copies of The Great Controversy. And they've told me many people politely took those books, perhaps even joyfully. Yeah, they expected a blessing and they took them. But at the end of the day, the garbage cans were full of them. I hate that thought. Just the picture, the garbage cans of America being filled with The Great Controversy. No, 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 no. As I've said for years, there's got to be a better way. Friend, I believe there's enough creativity in the church. Holy Ghost inspired creativity. I'm so sure of this, I'd lay my life on it. I said I believe there is enough creativity in the church for us to come up with a marketing campaign that will leave the world clamoring for this book, drooling over this book, demanding it, anxious to read it. Put the Holy Ghost in charge of this campaign and the world will want this book. They'll buy it by the millions. All we need is the right commercial, and I believe in the 58 seconds you just saw, God has given us that commercial. Now, you clicked on this ad, didn't you? Do you know what that means? It means this commercial worked for you. It drew you. It took you by the neck and put you down in front of the screen. When we started testing this ad, it started out at a 30% success rate. But right now it is drawing an astounding 47% of those who see it. It will draw millions more too if we can only get it before them. And that's where we need your help. While we're preparing the video to which the ad points, that's Fatima, the day the sun danced. And by the way, there's a lot of work to be done on that video. I need to introduce you to two videos that we've already shot. This one on your screen, This Isn't Your Grandmother's Great Controversy. And the second one, Let's Go Fishing. Both are at our website and both are key. One describes the book we're designing, and the second, I'll tell you how we can market this book to the world. That's what's in that one. All right, let's talk about the book. Back in 1990, we produced this edition of The Great Controversy, the new illustrated Great Controversy, with over 450 pictures inside. It was so popular, you might actually own a copy. Why was it such a success? I'll tell you. It was lavishly illustrated, true, but some of the photographs used were more than mere illustrations. They were absolute dynamite. These photographs powerfully exposed the pagan underbelly of the Roman Catholic Church, and that was its strength. Let me give you an example. We once got a letter from a man. I don't want to say he was Presbyterian because I don't have the letter and I don't remember his faith. All right? But we once got this letter from this person who said he was in church about to take communion when the plate with the round wafers was put in front of him. He had read our book, studied the photographs, and recognized the pagan identity of the round wafer. Now, the amazing thing is I don't recall any specific photograph of that round wafer or Eucharist being in our book. But there evidently was enough about the pagan invasion of Christianity in there that he said he felt like tossing the entire dish of wafers out the church window. Good for him. Why do I say that? Because before Christ returns, true, genuine Christianity must be brought out from under the rubbish Satan has heaped on it. For millennia, mankind has studied the path of the planets. Nothing wrong with that. But when you move from astronomy to astrology and come up with the zodiac and the solar wheel and horoscope and purport to be able to divine human behavior from the alignment of the planets when an individual was born, the Bible condemns that. You have become what the Bible calls an observer of the times when you do that, and you have moved into the occult. Here is God speaking through Moses in Deuteronomy 18:9-12, or speaking to Moses. When you are come into the land which the Lord thy God giveth thee, thou shalt not learn to do after the abominations of those nations. There shall not be found among you any one that makes his son or his daughter to pass through the fire. That's a pagan practice. Or that uses divination, or an observer of times, or an enchanter, or a witch, or a charmer, or a consulter with familiar spirits, or a wizard, or a necromancer. For all that do these things are an abomination unto the Lord. And because of these abominations the Lord thy God doth drive them out from before thee. Deuteronomy 18, 9-12. In addition to the heavens themselves, mankind seems always to have been fascinated with the sun. Stonehenge and the pyramids tell us that. But to carry it over into the worship of God, as I said, no way. The two cannot be mixed. And wherever they are, the occult has got to go. It has got to be repudiated, banished into the wilderness, put away from us. So let's look at a few examples of pagan or occult practices pointed out in this book, the New Illustrated Great Controversy, which, as I said, we're making better. We'll start with number 1, the solar wheel. The solar wheel adorns quite a bit of Catholic architecture. Here's a picture of one we took while we were in Portugal at a little place called Évora a few months ago. We used a drone. There you see members of the team there, and we're practicing, and we're going up to that solar wheel. I saw it and I knew that there would be value in it and sent that drone up there to take a shot. These solar wheels are not only to be found on Catholic churches. The Vatican itself is laid out like a giant solar wheel. There's that picture from our book on your screen. What is this doing at the headquarters of an institution that purports to be Christian? As I said, it is from the solar wheel that we get the horoscope, which God condemns. Number 2, the mitre. The next piece of rubbish I'd like to draw your attention to today is not the round wafer that man felt like tossing out the window, but the mitre of the priests who administer the wafer. That'll put the wafer itself in context. Where do we see this mitre first? Look at this picture. On Dagon, the father of Baal, the sun god. When I say father, in classical literature or pagan literature, Dagon was thought to be the daddy of Baal, who was the sun god of Phoenicia. While the full-blown fish mitre adorns Dagon's priests, a truncated version, featuring only the open mouth of the fish, adorns the Pope. This mitre is so important to the Vatican that they even bury their popes in them. I want you to take a time and just look at the shots that I'm putting up on your screen. Isn't this telling us something about the true loyalty of the popes? Why bury them in any version of Dagon's mitre? Tragically, even once Protestant Anglican priests now wear this vestige of Baal worship. But there's more. The third item, the monstrance. Once again, before we look at the round wafer or Eucharist, let's look at the container in which the wafer is placed for adoration. It's called a monstrance. Let's look at a few. What is common to all of them? The sunburst. Now, I don't know the significance of this motif, which predates Christianity. Some say it's a cosmic symbol of the sun mating with the moon. I don't know what that's supposed to mean. But look here. Look at this monstrance on your screen. Can't you see the crescent moon itself used as a frame or holder for the round wafer? Friend, what is this doing in Christianity? With that under our belts, now I think we can turn to the wafer itself, the Eucharist. Admittedly, this picture isn't in our book, but let's ask the question anyhow. Why is the Eucharist round? The bread is supposed to represent the broken body of Jesus. So what part of Jesus is round? Friend, can't you see it? The Eucharist is round because, like the mitre, itself a throwback to the sun god Baal, and like the monstrance, which is borrowed from paganism, this round wafer clearly represents the round S-U-N, not the S-O-N. Beloved, the mitre, the monstrance, and the Eucharist are pure paganism, And not just paganism, but sun worship. And they've crept into the church. Do you know how many millions of so-called heretics were slaughtered because they refused to bow down before this piece of bread, which the Catholic Church teaches is the actual body of God? Listen, are you beginning to see some dots here that may be disturbing you? Some dots you never even suspected existed before? Do you see why I say that there is rubbish to be thrown out of the Church of Christ? Now maybe you're ready to look at number 5. Christmas. In the ancient Roman Empire, the sun god was named Sol Invictus. His birthday was celebrated on the shortest day and longest night of the year. We know it as the winter solstice. And in the old Julian calendar, it fell on, guess what day? December 25th. That's the pagan festival honoring the birthday of the sun, S-U-N, fell on December 25th. The formal name of that birthday was Dies Natalis Solis Invicti, the birthday of the unconquered sun. Knowing full well what they were doing, possibly in the hope of winning pagans to Christianity, the Catholic Church baptized this relic of sun worship, December 25th, and introduced it into Christianity as Christmas, the birthday of the S-O-N. What a con game. The birthday of the sun, S-U-N, being palmed off as the birthday of the Son, S-O-N, of God. Before we look at number 6, let's summarize here. What have we looked at? What are the symbols that we've looked at today? Symbols that have paganism at their root. Symbols that in some instances point us right back to sun worship and are therefore to be classified as blasphemous, thoroughly alien to Christianity, left us by Jesus. Thus far we have 1, the solar wheel. Number 2, the Pope's mitre. Number 3, the monstrance. Number 4, the Eucharist. Number 5, the pagan festival of the birthday of the sun, Dies Natalis Solis Invicti, which the church baptized and incorporated into Christianity, calling it Christmas. Now maybe you're ready for number 6, Sunday. Undoubtedly the most pervasive, resilient, and deceptive vestige of sun worship in the entire church is the weekly festival of the Venerable Day of the Sun. Those were the words of Emperor Constantine when he instituted the first Sunday law. What makes Sunday keeping so deceptive? Some Christians actually believe they are honoring God by keeping what they see as the Sabbath of the Lord. But Sunday keeping is pagan. A throwback to the times when men worshipped the S-U-N. I'll say it again, what a con game. Beloved, these are relics of the same paganism against which Elijah contended on Mount Carmel. And they must all be exposed, acknowledged, and repudiated by those of us who call ourselves Christian. Not until the dots are connected in the public consciousness. Not until Christians can be brought to see just how many relics of ancient sun worship are alive and well in the church. And not just alive and well, but alive and well and masquerading as legitimate Christian icons. Not until this is done, in my opinion, will the pagan origins of Roman Catholicism be fully revealed across the earth. Not until this is done, the connecting of the dots as I've laid them out today, will the mystery of iniquity receive her death blow. Not until this is done will the true Sabbath of the Lord, the seventh-day Sabbath, be restored to its original place of authority and dignity across the world. Sun worship must be exposed for what it is. Like the penny brought to Christ in Matthew 22, about which he asked, whose image and superscription is this? So must Sunday sacredness be held up before the world and the same question asked. Whose image and superscription is this? That's not Christ's image there on Sunday, my friend. Christ said he was Lord also of the Sabbath, the creator of the Sabbath. That's somebody else's image on Sunday. I don't care what some Christians tell us about the resurrection of Jesus on Sunday. Sunday sacredness is not Christian. And I'll prove it to you right here and right now. If I were in a court of law, yes, I'd use my Bible and other supporting texts, but I'd build my case around this point. This is what I'd argue. If Paul or any of the apostles had changed the day of worship from Sabbath to Sunday, then without a doubt the Jews would have hurled this charge upon them. Certainly they would have hurled this charge upon Paul when they clamored for his death. Go to your Bible and read it for yourself. Acts 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26. Read it. There is the charge that Paul brought a Gentile into the temple, for they almost killed him over it. But there is no mention of the charge of Sabbath breaking in the litany of charges pressed upon him. Why? Because Paul kept the Sabbath of the Lord. The apostles kept the Sabbath of the Lord, the day of the Lord. No. Far from being Christian, Sunday keeping is but one more vestige of sun worship that has invaded Christianity and deceived billions. Friend, in Christianity, God makes the rules, not man. No man has the authority to tamper with the law of God and to declare any day holy and another unholy or repudiated. How dare any man call the Sabbath of the Lord the Jewish Sabbath? It is neither my Sabbath, nor your Sabbath, nor the Jews' Sabbath, nor the Gentiles' Sabbath. The Sabbath belongs to God. It is his Sabbath. He made it when he laid the foundations of the earth, and no man has the authority to touch it. As for those of us who keep it, we in effect are saying, here is my faith. I believe this planet was created by God in 6 literal days. But not just our planet. I believe man is a created being and that my homage is due to the God who created me and our planet, not to the Pope. I will keep the day designated by God as holy to commemorate creation and reject the day dedicated to the SUN. How did Jesus put it? Matthew 15:9, he said, but in vain they do worship me. Do you understand that? Vain, useless. In vain they do worship me, teaching for doctrines the commandments of men. When you can show me a Sabbath Sunday switch from the Bible, then I'll listen to you. Friend, Sunday sacredness must be exposed for what it is, a con game, a child of the devil himself. That's why we're producing this video, Fatima, the day the sun danced, which I've actually borrowed from extensively today. That's why we're advertising this video as extensively as we are, and that's why we're upgrading this book. Look at our video. This isn't your grandmother's great controversy. And you'll get a much clearer picture of what we're doing to the great controversy. Far from abandoning the photographs in the old edition, we're enhancing them with newer, high-resolution shots that can be expanded across 2 8.5 by 11-inch pages without becoming pixelated. That's why we're replacing the book itself with a 3-volume great controversy featuring larger pages, larger pictures, compelling captions, and as you can see on your screen, a companion DVD set for the ages. So much for the book itself. Now let's look at that commercial that brought you here.
The word obelisk literally means Baal's shaft or Baal's organ of reproduction. It's almost always placed in the center of a circle, the solar wheel, which represents the female genitalia and the physical sexual act. We can see in the Bible, in Hebrew, the word for pillar or idol is kaman, and kaman literally means sun idol or sun pillar. You can see in Isaiah 27:9, it's used this way: "By this therefore shall the iniquity of Jacob be purged, and this is all the fruit to take away his sin, when he marketh all the stones of the altar as chalk stones that are beaten in sunder, the groves and the images shall not stand up." That word images there is kaman, and that kaman is talking about an obelisk. Here is some pictures. We're going to roll through the entire world here. We're going to circle the globe and show you pictures throughout the entire world of these obelisks in their raw format. And on some of these, as the one that you can see here in Turkey, you can see that the ancient hieroglyphic and their language and pictures are actually still on these obelisks. Cleopatra's Needle is not just a neat little emblem. This was erected as a commemoration to the sun god there in London. This is the oldest obelisk in Scotland. This is the oldest obelisk in Switzerland. How about Mecca? How about in Luxor, Egypt, near the Nile River, there is an Egyptian obelisk. This is one of the most famous obelisks in the entire world. It's in Buenos Aires, Argentina. It's dedicated to the sun god Ra. Here's one in Amsterdam. Here's one in Ethiopia, Mongolia. How about the Washington Monument? This is the same exact structure that they built in ancient Egypt for the sun gods, as we've demonstrated thoroughly. Let me ask you a question. Where do we find this main symbol of the sun god today? Where do we find this main symbol of the obelisk? Would it shock you to discover that we find it in our churches? That's right. That's where the sun god obelisk ended up. It ends up in our churches all around the world. We call them steeples. They're called obelisk in ancient Egypt. If Pharaoh or an ancient Egyptian was alive today, they would walk down the street and they would feel comfortable coming to most of the churches that we have today, because they would say, wow, that is my religion. That's something that I can connect to. That is sun god worship. And we see throughout all around the world. Here's one that has two pillars that are built into this particular church. Ladies and gentlemen, the obelisk, the sun god worship, there shouldn't be one single symbol anywhere of ancient paganism or Egyptian sun god worship that is found inside of our religious societies today in Christianity.
And the king commanded Hilkiah the high priest, and the priests of the second order, and the keepers of the door, to bring forth out of the temple of the Lord all the vessels that were made for Baal, and for the grove, and for all the host of heaven. And he burned them without Jerusalem in the fields of Kidron, and carried the ashes of them unto Bethel. And he put down the idolatrous priests, whom the kings of Judah had ordained to burn incense in the high places in the cities of Judah, and in the places round about Jerusalem. Them also that burned incense unto Baal, to the sun, and to the moon, and to the planets, and to all the host of heaven.
Do you know the true story of Christmas? Was the Messiah born on December 25th? How did the Christmas tree, Santa Claus, and gift giving connect with Christmas? Have you ever considered where the tradition of the three wise men arose, or shepherds visiting the manger in the dead of winter? You may be surprised how far tradition has come. The facts behind Christmas may alarm you. Long before the New Testament and the Messiah, December 25th was a time dedicated to the sun. Rome observed 3 solar festivals, 2 on December 25th. The first was in honor of the god Saturn, known as Saturnalia. The second was in honor of Mithra, and the third was the Feast of Sol Invictus, a day observed by the Emperor Constantine. In 274 CE, Rome established December 25th as the birthday of the sun. Unable to remove this influence, the Church adopted this day as the sun, S-U-N, of righteousness. While many offer only traditions of men, we provide a clear and accurate description of the history of Christmas. If you are interested in the truth, then request our free booklet, December 25th, Birthday of the Sun. Dial 1-573-896-1000. That number again is 1-573-896-1000. Don't delay, operators are standing by. Or write to Discover the Truth, P.O. Box 463, Holt Summit, Missouri 65043. Read and request from our website, yrm.org.
Here we go again. Woo! Your brain's going to be hurting by the time we get through with this. I know mine will. And after I'm through with this, if, some of you, there's other stuff I'm not even going to delve into. If somebody wants these after I'm officially through with them, there's plenty more. Excuse me, there's plenty more, and I mean plenty more stuff that you can make a video on just to show what these people believe or don't believe or worship or don't worship or whatever you want to call it. Anyway, showing my grandpa's, I call it a Pumbaa hat, but it's a fez, Arabic. Anyway, and there you got, you got their so-called Holy Bible. All right, here we go again. This is a different book. This is the Scottish Rite, Freemasonry, Spring. Remember, this is back in the 70s. Back in the 70s. So, they'll probably say, oh, we used to believe that. We don't believe it anymore. Okay, if you say so. All right, you want to know what they worship? With the last one, you realize that they are into magic. And they worship nature, but this tells you a little more. I told you, every book has something different. They all don't have the same thing. You would at least make it easy on me and just put it all in one book so I don't have to, thumb through all this stuff. But anyway, so here it goes. We've got the Night of the Sun. This is, can you read it?
This is the 28th degree of Freemasonry. It says, the study of the ancient religions is of such vast proportions that were one able to devote his entire lifetime to it, he could not hope to complete it. The worship of the sun and its planets, with more or less variations, was the most prevalent, although originally the planets, as well as fire, light, and heat, were but symbols, or rather the outward manifestations of the Supreme Being or intellect. This degree, which is the 28th degree, especially was the real belief of our first brethren who lived long before the pyramids of Egypt or the first Babylon.
Helios is the sun god in Greek mythology. He is a Titan, son of Hyperion and Thea, with Selene as his sister, the goddess who personifies the moon. The sun god, after being awakened by the rooster, which is the animal consecrated to the solar god, started his journey. Every day, the god ascends in his chariot of fire, driven by 4 powerful flying steeds, ready to go after the goddess Eos, who announces the dawn of a new day. Helios completes an extensive journey from his palace in the east to the western ocean, where he sets himself. After diving into the waters, the god allows his horses to graze on the Elysian fields, and at night, the god returns to the east, sailing in a golden boat made in the forges of the god Hephaestus. Helios, when he is completing his route, has a privileged view of the whole world around him, and so he can know everything that happens during daylight. The god witnessed the abduction of Persephone by Hades, and also caught Aphrodite sleeping with Ares, the god of war. But the sun god had his shine eclipsed by Apollo, another solar deity. In much of the Hellenic world, the cult of Helios was replaced by the cult of the god Apollo, the bright one. The Olympian god even replaced Helios in most myths, where the latter was once the main character. The most famous myth with Helios is certainly the one in which the god lets out his son, Phaeton, drive the solar car. But even in this myth, the god lost his space to Phoebus Apollo. Yet, there is a place in Greece where the cult of Helios kept its importance, the island of Rhodes. There, a huge colossus of bronze was built, honoring the god. This gigantic statue was considered one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. In ancient Rome, Helios was worshipped by the name Sol Invictus and had great prestige among the legion soldiers. In homage to this god, scientists gave the name of helium to one of the elements of the periodic table. This element, together with hydrogen, constitutes a large share of the sun's chemical composition. Helios, the sun god, albeit obscured by Apollo, still shines in the heavens, portraying the strength of the ancient Titan.
Sunday, also known as Ravivar, is devoted to Lord Surya, that is sun god. It is reported that the natural influence of sun on Sunday is very high. Being a day for celebration, it is most suitable to hang out with friends and family. The Vrat is mainly observed to overcome skin problems and diseases. Sunday fasting is also observed to get blessings for new ventures. This fasting includes eating only once, that too before sunset. Also, eating salt, oil, and fried food items is avoided. Devotees offer red color flowers to Surya and apply red sandalwood paste as tilak on their forehead. Worshipping the sun god removes all kind of illness from one's body. Many devotees also donate alms on this day in order to accomplish their desires. To get more spiritual videos, stay tuned to Artha channel.
If I rejoiced because my wealth was great, and because mine hand had gotten much, if I beheld the sun when it shined, or the moon walking in brightness, and my heart hath been secretly enticed, or my mouth hath kissed my hand, this also were an iniquity to be punished by the judge, for I should have denied the God that is above. Chapter 8. At that time, saith the Lord, they shall bring out the bones of the kings of Judah, and the bones of his princes, and the bones of the priests, and the bones of the prophets, and the bones of the inhabitants of Jerusalem out of their graves. And they shall spread them before the sun, and the moon, and all the host of heaven, whom they have loved, and whom they have served, and after whom they have walked, and whom they have sought, and whom they have worshipped. They shall not be gathered, nor be buried. They shall be for dung upon the face of the earth.
Thousands of years ago, men worshipped the sun. Originally, they looked beyond the orb to the invisible God. They personified him as Brahma, Amun, Osiris, Baal, Adonis, Malkarth, Mithras, and Apollo. Krishna is the Hindu sun god. Sun worship continues. Because some Christian churches pray to the sun god in their church services and don't understand who they are praying to. Simply stated, dear listeners, the sun god that they were praying to is Lucifer. Lucifer, also known as Satan or the devil.